Yesterday morning at 2:41 a.m. at General Eisenhower's headquarters, General Jodl, the representative of the German High Command, and of Grand Admiral Dönitz, the designated head of the German state, signed the act of unconditional surrender of all German land, sea, and air forces in Europe to the Allied expeditionary forces and simultaneously to the Soviet High Command. Hostilities will end officially at 1 minute after midnight tonight, Tuesday, the 8th of May. We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing. Today is Victory in Europe Day. Tomorrow will also be Victory in Europe Day. But let us not forget for a moment the toils and efforts that lie ahead. Japan, with all her treachery and greed, remains unsubdued. The injuries she has inflicted upon Great Britain, the United States, and other countries, and her detestable cruelties call for justice and retribution. We must now devote all our strength and resources to the completion of our task, both at home and abroad. Advance, Britannia! Long live the cause of freedom! God save the King!
God save the King. It is the 75th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day, the 8th of May, Friday, the year of our Lord 2020. Steve.
Jack, what happened 75 years ago?
75 years ago, the Allies went to Berlin and they forced the German High Command to sign the complete surrender of Germany. It was quite interesting. One of the things we were talking about earlier was that in order for us not to offend our Soviet allies, we actually had lower commanders sign those documents. We had, instead of Montgomery and instead of Eisenhower, who theoretically would have outranked Zhukov, we had Tedder for the British, and we had
Air Marshal Tedder.
Air Marshal
Remember,
Tedder.
this was in Berlin that the Red Army controlled, right? Because we allowed the Red Army to control. On the eve of the next Great War, and that's the Great War with another set of communists, the Chinese Communist Party, our work of the 20th century is not done yet. I guess they're going to call this the long, they call shorter long centuries, right? We thought it ended with the fall of the Berlin Wall, that the 20th century was actually 1914 to 1989. Right? And they called that a short century. That century, we lost 250 million people to war, pestilence, famine, dealing with bringing down the totalitarian dictatorships. Guess what? Didn't get it done. Got one more to go, and they've now teamed up with Persia, Turkey, Russia, Pakistan, North Korea to control the Eurasian landmass. Your efforts, your children's efforts, your grandchildren's efforts are going to be on this next great one. And you got to remember, for all of our friends in Beijing, they're listening to this, and the Chinese intelligence, the guy right there, Winston Churchill, they gave that magnificent, our work is still not done, right? Our work is still not done. We did the first part, VE Day, but our work is still not done. In the entire 1930s, he was considered a wingnut. He was considered a warmonger, a wingnut. Just remember that. He was considered, today he's he's held up in highest esteem as the greatest war leader in the West, one of the greatest men in his world history. In 1938 and 39, or 39, they had to turn to him. But up until the whole years in his biographies, it's called The Years in the Wilderness, right? Raheem, he was the complete, and I'm saying not dissed. He was dissed and dismissed as irrelevant, a warmonger, hair on fire. You think our hair on fire is here every day? He was the Nazis, right? Remember, he didn't give him a break. He was beating on Hitler every day. And the reason that they stood up and they got to VE Day, and God bless the Queen, however, it was British working class people, the same thing that voted for Brexit, in those same towns and cities that voted back Nigel Farage on your first Brexit and then came in hard for the Tories, the Red Wall, right? It was those working class people that had Churchill's back that they could put together a government. They wanted the royal family and the British elites, the same British elites selling us out to Huawei today. History doesn't change. History doesn't change. The same British elites wanted Lord Halifax to give up his title, come into Commons, head up a government, and that government would save the British Empire, cut a deal with Hitler. Hitler, you get Europe. We'll turn together against the Russians, the communists, and we'll keep the Raj. We'll keep India. We'll keep Egypt. We'll keep the Suez. That still upsets you, the Suez. No, but that was the deal. That was the deal. We keep the empire. You keep continental Europe, and together we'll work this on. He said, not going to happen. If we don't take this guy down in Mussolini, we got nothing but a century of badness in front of us.
I want to go back to something you just said as well, the long century element of this. In that clip there, you hear Winston Churchill saying, "We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing, but let us not forget for a moment the toils and efforts that lie ahead." And Steve, we've often talked about the managed decline. We've talked about the end of history theory. That was the career establishment classes after the Second World War turning around and effectively saying the hard work that we have done and handing it all back over and saying we're not going to enforce this freedom. We're not going to enforce this, and this is where the multicultural, the everything stems from. That we will actually not stand for anything, and if anything, we forgot the toil and efforts that lie ahead, and that's why we are where we are today. Without that managed decline mindset, the CCP wouldn't be in the position it is today.
Let's just talk about the rot today. We start the show off with this. Where else has it been on mainstream media? Did the Fox guys Did the Fox guys say anything to President Trump's going to go give a speech, or he's going to lay a wreath at the World War II memorial? Is it at noon, Jason? He's going to do it at noon. He and the First Lady. They'll be done in a very appropriate ceremony to lay a wreath and to make some, I'm sure, hopefully some comments that are a thing. But I don't remember Fox and Friends. And Fox and Friends is a great show. But this morning, every newscast should have had a special. Right now, we've taken World War II down to Normandy and the Holocaust, right? And obviously, the Holocaust is one of the worst things in human history and has to be commemorated. And I got to tell people, we should have every kid in junior high school we should send them, like they do in Israel, we should send them to Poland and let them see Auschwitz and Birkenau. And Birkenau is actually more powerful because that is a place, Auschwitz is powerful, but Birkenau is a place industrially designed for mass executions. When you go to Birkenau, you're never the same.
It will change your life.
It'll change your life. I'm telling you, it's the most. I made a film with Duck Dynasty guys and about the rot of Western civilization, and we went to Auschwitz and Birkenau, and it's incredibly moving. But we've taken it down to Pearl Harbor, Normandy, and the Holocaust, and we've forgotten everything in the 30s. By the way, I said 35 yesterday. Before I'm corrected by #pandemic. That was really the precursor, the pregame. That was Spain, right? That was Spain in 35, the Marco Polo Bridge in 37. But this thing, it went on forever. But it was those people that said, and look, Churchill, the reason he was dismissed, he wasn't giving you a happy talk. He said, hey, guess what? We're going to have to go to war with these guys. And nobody wanted to hear it after World War I. The Brits had lost so many, and the French had lost so many, and the French were 4 or 5 million troops, the best of their. That's why the French surrendered in 4 weeks in World War II. The Brits absolutely. I think it was the entire class of 1913 or 14 from Oxford or Cambridge or one of them. I mean, just horrific, the casualties. However, he gave people bad news, and we got bad news for you here today. We've got 16% unemployment, and it's not. Listen, the White House right now should just be jobs, 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 and the underemployment. Remember, it's not just the unemployed. 50% of you are going to be doing part-time gig work, right? Or the salary is going to be cut back, your time's going to be cut back, or your time's going to be increased and your salary is going to be cut back.
If you don't mind, I'd like to go back to the surrender because I think there's a lesson in here for our listeners, right? We remember the end of World War II, but we have to remember the aftermath, okay? And there's a geopolitical lesson in here, which is never trust communists. Remember, we left Eastern Europe in the sphere of influence of the Soviets with promises that these people were going to have self-determination, that these people were going to have democratic elections, and instead we watched them be enslaved for 50 years. And I think that there is a very clear parallel here to the Belt and Road countries that are being put into debt
100%,
slavery
100%.
through the courts. And we need to remember that we can't abandon these countries to the Chinese sphere.
It's also the gathering storm. This is why if you're watching this show and you're on hashtag War Room Pandemic or at War Room 2020 or at War Room Pandemic, you're ahead of the curve. And this is why hedge fund people watch this, why news producers watch this. Because you're seeing there's a gathering storm. Okay? And now the storm's actually come ashore. President of the United States, I'm so proud of this show yesterday, connecting the dots of the President of the United States at the Resolute desk talking about the sneak attack, that this thing was an act of war, Mike Pompeo, and tying together the viciousness of this virus in the permanently disqualified. I talked to many people, including the Committee on the Present Danger, who are the warhawks. They had missed it. And when I told them that, it was stunned silence. These are guys that have been in DOD. These are the guys, money on cold warriors. When I said, they're like, what? We've never heard of that, right? They were in stunned silence that it came out. And by the way, that it was even came out at this time. It wasn't a bigger announcement and kind of coordinated. I mean, this is not a small thing. You made the point about the kids, the obese kids, et cetera. It's not like we got a deep bench right now. This is not the 1930s where everybody's kind of tough, and then you got a bunch of kids that are what I refer in the military refer to them as pies. Okay, the pies. You got a lot of pies. So, I'm gonna give the mic back over. You guys got to judge.
I just want to. So the Red Arrow, the Red Arrows, which is the part of the Royal Air Force, which does these sort of air displays, flew over London this morning. Obviously, celebrations are taking place across Europe and commemorations also for VE Day. I want to just read you something that's very interesting that just was released for the anniversary of Victory in Europe Day this morning. The last German military communications that were decoded Park have been revealed today. These were from the military radio network codenamed Brown at Cuxhaven. And the last message was, quote, "Closing down forever, all the best, goodbye." It's pretty
impressive.
And the reason they did just releasing that now, because the Russians continue to use the German codes for their diplomatic codes. And if anybody wants to go back and read through them, you'll find out that almost every single person accused in the McCarthy trials actually
no,
Vanona.
That's 100%. The McCarthy, this is the whole thing today. We're going to go, listen, we're going to be called the new McCarthys. That's coming. That's coming. We go after Susan Thornton and Amanda Bennett and all these guys on Wall Street, right? The Schwartzmans and all these guys. We're going to be called, that's all coming. You're McCarthy's. This is another witch hunt. This is a red. Hey, McCarthy was right. I.F. Stone, and they try to dance around this. At The Nation, I.F. Stone was on the KGB payroll. Okay, McCarthy was 100% correct. The place was. I tell you, you don't have to say. Look at what we did in the surrender. Why didn't we march? Why didn't we go to Berlin? Why did we swing south? Why when we took that surrender document was Eisenhower not there? We didn't want to offend the Russians. Zhukov had to be the senior guys because the thought was they had the bigger sacrifice. They had lost 20 million people or whatever it was, but. No offense, one of the reasons they lost to 20 million people, Stalin shot all the good guys. He shot all the real officers back in the 30s, right? It wasn't like the United States or Britain told you to eviscerate your officer corps. They're like Mao Zedong. The same thing. It's a new fabulous book, China at War, that somebody sent me, and it's fantastic because it talks about the whole from the Marco Polo Bridge to the end of the Korean War. It's a 15-year sweep of China, and you see how the Chinese communists always looking out for themselves. We'll be back in a moment for VE Day.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Oh, welcome back. I thought we were going to start with a voice. Let's hit it. Another voice.
Nobody ever heard of a thing like this, but they were right, because if I didn't, we would have lost 2 million, 2.5 million, maybe more than that people, and we'll be at 100,000, 110. higher than the lower level of what was projected if we did the shutdown. But still, you're talking about, I say, 2 Yankee stadiums of people. It's unacceptable.
So we're now at 110.
I'm not a fan of the way we're doing this right now. Remember, there's only 3 numbers that count: the dead, the jobless, and the amount of cash Beijing's going to send us, or we're going to seize. Okay, the tens of trillions of dollars are going to break the CCP. I'm not sure that the president should be the guy out there, ratcheting up a number, because I went from 55. The other day was 80 or 90, got to 90. Now we've had another jump to 110.
Sunday at the town hall was the first time that he mentioned 100. He said 80, 90, maybe 100.
Right. Now we popped another 10.
Right. And earlier that morning, Scott Gottlieb
But
was
nobody
on.
focused on 100. They focused on 90 for some reason.
Yes,
afterwards.
because the initial clip said
Right.
80 or 90, and then later on he said 100. But look, now we're at 110, and we've said this on Tuesday, we said this on Wednesday, we said this on Thursday. This is why we want to split off the coronavirus task force, have Birx, have Fauci, have Adams, have Redfield. They should be owning the models, the numbers, the projections, the count. That's not President Trump's responsibility to own those numbers. He's the face of the economic recovery. Get out there and do his thing. He's the jobs guy. That's what he can control. Let the people with the white lab coats or the green eye shades worry about the projections.
Well, it's about ownership or not. Maybe we can disagree, but here's what I don't think you ought to be doing is be the guy on the tape saying that here's why. Do the math. I did the math last night. I came back to my guy Jack Maxey. I think, hey, and this is arithmetic. I think we're at 80,000 by the time we get to the show on Monday morning. I think by this weekend. I think we're going to be at 110,000 by, hey, I'm just throwing out a wild number, Memorial Day. So and you just can't keep blowing by these numbers because I got to tell you, there are 30-second spots in there, right? The president's got to back off and let those guys do that, right?
Well, and it writes itself. And again, we're negotiating against ourselves here.
Yes.
I mean, it's not as though Joe Biden's coming out and saying, I think it's going to be 130 and we're countering that's going to be 110. This is the whole point.
You're quoted in The Hill this morning. What did you say? It was a very powerful quote. And I think we ought to, I don't know if you got it on audio, if you can read the quote. It was a great story, and I thought you had a very powerful quote in there.
Yeah, a story this morning in The Hill just talking about the realities of the numbers. And I said, there's zero need for President Trump to come out and predict what ultimate death totals will be. The president should serve as the face of the economic recovery efforts and leave medical experts to handle models and projections that could guide his decisions. Again, that's the whole point with these models is it's not about going on predict it and guessing what the end total is going to be. This is about then what public policy measures we put in place to make adjustments. But as we saw from that Penn model earlier in the week, we have the economic models as well.
I want to go to the great conservative philosopher, Edmund Burke, who wrote the fabulous book on the French Revolution, which, remember, Cho in line when Kissinger asked him in 1972, they're sitting there having the meeting, and there was some time it got quiet. It was Nixon and Mao, and they were so excited Nixon to see Mao the first day. Kissinger got a little nervous and asked Cho to kind of keep the conversation going. Tell me, what do you think of the French Revolution? He goes, too early to tell. Okay, these brothers are playing the long game. Okay, in Churchill's, what does Churchill pivot to immediately? We're going to celebrate today and we'll celebrate tomorrow, but we got a lot of work to do here. More importantly, for right now, we got all our resources and efforts got to be in Asia. I've always argued that WW2 is really an Asian war. Given everything that happened in Europe, the centerpiece was Asia and the control of Asia. Our allies were China. You're reading a great book on China right now. Barbara Tuchman's still one on China. China was the Russia for us at that time. They took, I think, at the end of the day, 25 or 30 million casualties in China, fighting each other and fighting the Japanese and all of that. If you had told those men and women in World War II that on the 75th anniversary of VE Day, that Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States, at the Resolute desk, the same desk they used to win the war, right? All the great decisions made around, that he would say, we had another Pearl Harbor, and we'd have, and the President of the United States talking about 110,000 dead civilians in the confines of the United States, and talking about these kids who had all come out of the Great Depression, 33 that we would have the same unemployment level close to or heading to as the Great Depression, 75 years to a person. They would tell you you're nuts. That's impossible. And more importantly, we didn't give our lives and all that to do that. This is Burke's dictum. We owe as much to those that came before us as you owe to your children and grandchildren. Everything says, hey, we got to do it for the kids. Yeah, kids are important. You owe it for how we got here. This is what we've allowed to happen. And I want to rub your nose in it and the whole country's nose in it. I don't care I'm public enemy number one in China with the CCP. I want to be public enemy number one here. I wanted you guys to get so angry, and that Bannon is so obnoxious and so over the top. You know, there's an article today in CNN that, hey, Hong Kong stocks are going to get up because they don't think the United States and China are going to get. We're at war. We're at war. There's 110. The President of the United States has quoted 110,000 of your countrymen. And I don't care if they're 80 years old or 90 years old. Those are guys that fought in Vietnam. And I don't care if they work in meatpacking plants. These are hardworking Americans down there doing the jobs you don't want to do. We're going to have a Kobach on here in a second. I don't care if they're in prisons. Heck, a heck of a lot of guys in prison serve their country. This is revolting. And more importantly, the giants that came before us think it's revolting. They would be disgusted with us. And that's why I don't hear any whining of the deplorables. It's all the politicians. It's the political class, these bad guys on Wall Street. Yes, it is. But it's your responsibility. Churchill, but there would be no Churchill if it was not for the deplorables of England. The same exact people that got you Brexit and the same exact people that backed the Tories on the second time when the elites got a second vote. Because if you had lost the election, they're going to unwind the whole thing. The crash of the red wall is exactly like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania. This is inextricably linked. It's the same people. That's why it's the same guys in China. Lao Beijing, old 100 names, is you. It's the little guy who always gets dumped on. You all listen, throughout history, you always pay the taxes. You always bear the burden of fighting for freedom. That's just the way it is. I'd love to wave a wand and say it's not like that. These guys called the communists, they kind of told people, and then you notice it's only a small group of guys. They're gangsters. There's no communism. Jesus Christ talked about that on the Sermon on the Mount, right? That's an aspiration. That's aspirational. It never quite happens. What did he say? It's harder for a rich man, and I realize, it's symbolic. It's about personality. It's harder for a rich man to get in the kingdom of God. It's harder for a camel to get through an eye of a needle.
Easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than a rich man to heaven.
Just saying. I'm just quoting. And guys, it's symbolic. Well, hey, some people take it. Hey, when Jesus lays it out there, listen. Hey, I tell you who took it seriously. The young guy I was talking to, he said, "Look, I really believe you, but look, I'm gonna check out. I'll make a donation. How about a donation?" And Jesus said, "No, I'm not looking for donors. I'm looking for souls." Right.
Right.
The kid was a great kid. He says, "I do everything right." Well, hey, give all that up and come get in the pack and let's wander around here and save some souls. And the guy goes, "How about a donation?" She says, "I'm not looking for donors. I'm looking for souls."
Well, this goes back to when President Trump is talking. So say this morning when you brought up the 110,000 deaths, of course they're going to focus on then what are the death counts and what's going on. Or you can talk about here's the war that we're going to win. Here's what we're doing to win the war. Yes. So when we talk about, you never see in the old black and white clips, you never see FDR or Churchill saying, today we are up to X number of dead. And in having this conversation, you see here's the war. Here's what we're going to go and do. This is, if you talk about how we're going to go and win the war, the media is going to focus on how we're going to go and win the war.
This is one of the reasons Donald J. Trump's president of the United States. Donald J. Trump did it. He's the greatest candidate we ever had, but it was the brilliance of guys like Jason Miller. Absolutely. You never hear Churchill and Roosevelt. There's not one clip of those guys saying, hey, we're going to lose. Hey, we got to do this Normandy thing, but we're probably going to lose 50,000 guys. They never say that. They're talking about actions moving forward, and they're also saying the whole time, these guys are devils. These guys are the worst guys on earth, and they have to be destroyed. Not cut a trade deal with them, not talk to them. If it's Pearl Harbor and 9/11, then let's do what we did at Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor, and here's the thing. I thought about this last night. I didn't catch this. the delegation they sent to sign the trade deals exactly like the delegation the Japanese had working with Cordell Hall to try to get an agreement. Remember, why were the Japanese over here? Because of oil, because we had cut off oil to the Asian co-prosperity sphere, which they were trying to dominate all of East Asia. And we said, guess what? No oil. And they were over here to negotiate some sort of diplomatic thing that was the big thing in the fall of 1941, and had the sneak attack. Hey, the Chinese knew. They knew they had community spread and human-to-human transmission when they came here and signed the documents. And as we now know, it's coming out, they never mention a word. They never say anything about it. What's different than the Japanese? And it's the president said it's a sneak attack, just like worse than Pearl Harbor. Worse than Pearl Harbor. We're at war. I know we don't – look, the people in the United States, we don't want to we don't want to grasp it. We don't want to think about it because we don't want to be there. But 110, President Trump now is up to 110,000 of your countrymen are going to be dead. And hey, and that's the May 30th number. Okay? We're going to return again. Freddie Gray from The Spectator is going to join us from the United Kingdom in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
On the John Fredericks Radio Network on Dish Channel 219, the America's Voice out of Colorado. I want to thank the guys for all the production they give us, and John Fredericks. Also, Newsmax TV in 70 million homes, FM 99.1, 103.9. We're now live in Canada. Later in the day, we'll be subtitled in Mandarin, blowing through the firewall. Over 100 million views and now over 7.5 million downloads on the podcast. So the podcast, we're ubiquitous. Remember, on the podcast, go anywhere. It's all free. Just give us a review. Now honored in our honoring of the 75th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day, we now bring in the U.S. editor of The Spectator, one of the finest publications around, Freddie Gray, who joins us from the Isle of Wight, where you are sheltering in place. Freddie, how does the U.S. editor of the Spectator manage things from an island off an island?
Well, I don't spend all of my time on it, but it is an interesting place to reflect on the condition of the world. We have some Spitfires going over this morning of the E-Day, so I'm appreciating your Churchillian rhetoric.
One of the things we've been talking about, we played the Prime Minister Winston Churchill's talks at the beginning, is about Churchill, his years in the wilderness in the 1930s, warning against the rise of fascism on the continent of Europe. And we were thinking about President Trump. Jason brought in the clips of President Trump talking about 100,000 to 110,000. We just had this jobs report that shows that we're directionally headed towards unemployment numbers like the Great Depression. The Zero Hedge yesterday did this magnificent aggregation to show that the UK economy may be in the worst shape in 300 years. Give us some historical perspective. Where are we on the challenges of the 21st century, given what our forefathers went through in the 20th century?
I think in terms of the economic pain, it gets pretty bad, particularly for Britain. I think America's job spike, unemployment spike, terrifying, but you're going through the pain. We've taken this to freeze everything, to suspend everything through debt. It's not going to last for a very long time. It's going to ravel quite quickly. However, we'd have two things going for us. One, the Brexit, the ability to form our own foreign policy and our finances going forward. And the other thing is the minister who understands
Freddie, we're gonna have to have the producer pick up because we're only getting like every fifth word. Let's see if we can't take care of that, and let's turn the conversation here. Fish, let's get on that right away.
We'll get Freddie on the phone if we can.
Let's get Freddie on the phone.
Clean up the Skype. Skype issues continue to plague us. Do you think this is CCP hitting our Skype so we switch over to Zoom and then they get all of our stuff in here?
If they do that, then they're going to know Freddy's direct address. So hopefully get Freddy on the phone here in a minute. But I'm going to turn it to you then.
Yeah.
In perspective, where are we, given what our forefathers went through with the rise of fascism in the 30s and how they delayed, and eventually confronted it when it was at the top of its game?
Well, this is, I think, what we were getting at in the first segment of this show, right? And it's that Churchill quote that we played about the fact that, yes, there's a time to celebrate, but there's also a long, long road ahead. And our political establishments, just like they did before the Second World War, immediately after the Second World War, looked for a reason to capitulate, looked for a reason to back down from the fight, looked for a reason. Remember, Winston Churchill himself was then co-opted by the pro-EU crowd to say that because Churchill believed in uniting a Europe around a common set of values so that it wouldn't go to war with itself, that therefore we should ingratiate ourselves within a political union, a monetary union, an economic union, a trading bloc. And when we fought the Brexit campaign over 2015-16, these were the themes, as you'll remember, that were repeatedly coming out, was the pro-EU side saying, no, you don't understand. The post-war order is designed for us to be effectively one nation, as a continent, one nation. And a similar thing, of course, was taking place here in the United States at the very same time also. The Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, everything that we saw trying to tie not just America's trade to other nations, but the idea of how those things were managed through committee, through commissions, through appointments and not elections. Those are the things we sacrificed so much to defend democracy and the idea that the ordinary person had a say. The rights, by the way, which they fought for hundreds of years, the Chartist rebellions, all of that. And then to give it away to the unelected, to the commissioners and the bureaucrats. And if you don't mind me saying, I think we're seeing that taking place also in other areas right now in the news cycle too. I mean, you look at what happened with General Flynn. You look at what's happening with the dossiers and the interviews and the information that Adam Schiff has had to release now. All of that pointing to the fact that effectively our ruling classes abandoned the battlefield after World War II. Chose to take us into something that we would not want to have any single part of. Do we have Freddy back?
We're gonna
working on it.
No, but here.
But I mean, isn't that the case?
There's so many dots to connect here. We're gonna have Kobach on. Oh, we got Freddy on. Freddy Gray, the U.S. editor of the Spectator, one of the most renowned publications. You just had.
It's my future job, by the way.
You aspire. You actually have to work to have that job.
On the Isle of Wight.
Freddie, in fact, you guys just had your anniversary. Was it the 175th? I know the what's the
190?
190 of the Spectator. You're older than the Economist, correct?
Yes, and we just did our 10,000th. We believe no other existing magazine has done. So we had quite a big celebration of that. We were going to have a big party, but had to delay that for obvious reasons.
Well, for 10,000 issues, that shows you go back to what we were talking about, Burke's dictum, that we owe as much to the people that came before us as we do to the future. We're agents in a period of time. So given that human agency, where do you think we stand, given what our forefathers did to defeat fascism in the 20th century?
Well, I think for Brits, it's particularly interesting and difficult at the moment because we're kind of caught in between two worlds because as we kind of do Brexit and we decide where our country is going to go, we've got to decide whether we want to be part of an alliance system with America or whether we want to be part of a global enterprise system which doesn't do very good job for the citizens, for its people. And I think we have two things going for us. One is Brexit, and the other is a Prime Minister who understands the importance of this. And I thought in his speech this morning, Boris hit on some pretty good themes.
Can you elaborate on that for us for the American audience, Freddie, who didn't happen to catch Boris Johnson's speech back, obviously from his stint in hospital and convalescing at Chequers? What did the Prime Minister say this morning?
Well, he hit on the idea that Britain always overcomes the odds, which is very important for Brits, and you're getting a sort of patriotism emerging in Britain, which is quite cheering to see, because for a long time patriotism was considered sort of racist or frowned upon, or actually just a bit common. And I think you're actually seeing a sort of national spirit emerging, and the pandemic is helping in that respect.
What is the perception right now? This whole concept is Great Britain and what the victory really meant, and for the deplorables and the Red Wall there is under the Tories. Do you see this as the Singapore on the Thames, or do you actually see it as a national call for rejuvenation to become a manufacturing and really become an independent nation with its own manufacturing base in the England we knew, or the United Kingdom we knew back in the early 20th and 19th century?
I think there's a very interesting split in the Tory party. There are Brexiteers who see this purely as a kind of opportunity to become a tax haven Singapore for global investment, and there are people who see it as a great national moment. I hope the answer is mostly the second one, but with a little bit of the first one, to gear up our economy for the future. I think that one of the most interesting parts about Brexit is that it's changed the national character, and that I think we're beginning to see the emergence of a new kind of Britain, and I think that's quite interesting and quite inspiring.
How does that play? You're our English cousins. How does that in our mother country? How does that play in unison with the United States, and where do you think we are, particularly in this great appears struggle? President Trump called it Pearl Harbor the other day. The virus that was let out by the Chinese Communist Party. How do you think that foreshadows what's going to happen in the future with us as partners?
Well, I think there's this very interesting issue of Huawei, which I know you've discussed a bit on this show, and that Britain has committed to having Huawei do its 5G infrastructure. And that has very annoyed President Trump. We know that he was furious about it. And so now Britain has a chance to drop Huawei because of the pandemic and actually come round and make sure that we form a better alliance with America in the future and not rely on Chinese to do our infrastructure.
Freddie, go ahead, jump in, Raheem.
Freddie, I want to drill into that a little bit as well. Tell me what you think of the broader consensus amongst sort of the ordinary people of the United Kingdom, the people who voted in majority for Brexit. You'll hear from the Europhiles and from the anti-Brexit brigade that actually moving closer a relationship with the United States will mean chlorinated chicken in the supermarkets and lower regulatory standards and all this stuff. Is Britain too far gone down the route of having these sort of burdensome regulations, down the route of welfarism, down the route of dependency, to actually have a relationship with the United States where there is more of a market-based individual responsibility mindset?
I'm not sure, Reem. I mean, sometimes in my gloomier moments, I do think we're too far gone down the route of welfare dependency and so on. But I don't think necessarily it's too late, and I think Brexit and the great flux in global relations that's happening as a result of the pandemic, I think that gives us an opportunity to be sort of born again as a nation in a way.
Freddy, this is Jack Maxey. Quick question about Huawei and sort of the tenor on the street. Are people in Britain starting to blame people like Tony Blair and some of these other quislings who have adopted make money at any cost with the Chinese Communist Party?
I think so. I think there's definitely a sense that Blair was a popular prime minister at the time, but a disaster for the country, and that has only grown as it's become more obvious how true it was. There's also a sense that David Cameron, was an unsuccessful prime minister. Now I think that's grown, and I think there's a just like you have in America, there's a sense that the political class betrayed or has sold out a lot of our interests for a long time.
We've got to get the front page of The Spectator to have Cameron and the Chinese links going on there. Freddie, you know what a big fan I am of your front pages.
Yeah, Freddie, we got about a minute. Tell people, we're always promoting The Spectator, but make the case to the deplorables why they should have access to what is a legendary magazine out of the United Kingdom that's online now. Why should they spend time to go to The Spectator?
Well, what I'd really like your listeners to do is to check out the Spectator's US edition, which if you go to spectator.us/subscribe, you can see how you can subscribe. And our next edition, which is coming out next month, is called How to Tame the Dragon, and it's about how America, not Britain, America, can deal with the threat of China in the coming years.
Well, we invite you back when that issue's ready to come out. We want to have you back for it. We'll do a special edition on this because when the Spectator talks, people should listen, particularly conservatives and people in the Trump campaign or in the Trump movement. It's a spectacular publication. I want to thank you for joining us today from the Isle of Wight.
Thank you very much. I will not be on the Isle of Wight next time we speak.
Hopefully, you'll be in studio here.
Just saying that for the tax authorities.
for one of his 3 times. It's like visiting the colonies in the old days, right?
Yep.
Make sure the royal governor Freddy Gray shows up to make sure everything in the colonies is okay.
We'll have the red carpet.
Thank you, Freddie. Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. When we return, Kris Kobach is going to talk to us with so many unemployed. Why are we still issuing work visas? You got cuddle on those guys not ready?
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. I had a slight technical problem. We got Freddie on by phone. That edition, How to Tame the Dragon, the Spectator's special edition about China in the United States of America. We got to do something special on that, Raheem. So I'll leave that in your
We're trying. Look, I've been working on the Spectator guys for 10 years now. Remember, the Spectator guys, and all credit to them, long-lasting magazine, very popular in conservative circles in the United Kingdom. But the Spectator magazine, it kind of does what the Conservative Party does, right? Is it oscillates between the working class vote that they need and the sort of the neoliberal effect intellectual side as well. And you see that reflected in their columnists, which is a good reason to read it, actually, because you get both sides of the argument right there in one place. But they have been much tougher recently. They were tough on Brexit. They were very celebratory when the whole thing happened. They've had much more what I would call right-wing writers on the Spectator than in previous years.
They weren't totally there in the first Brexit.
Correct.
They were where London was so important. That became the platform for kind of the Brexit movement. And Nigel, remember the next morning when Nigel sobered up and had his first interview on BBC, the first hat tip he gave was to the Breitbart London guys for being the
His
platform.
buried lead.
Is that
He never
one of the
sobered up.
things?
Spectator and Daily Telegraph are not good. That's the whole reason I started the thing, because I'm a big Telegraph and Spectator, and these guys were wet.
Yeah.
If you weren't on board with the first Brexit, is that then where people say, when were you on board with President Trump? Or people look back and this wasn't a day one.
It's like Kaylee's getting lit up now for some of the early comments in May or 2015. Not a true believer from the beginning.
So the originals look at the people who joined on later
Always.
and say,
But believe me, I look at them very, very negatively. And they hear about it every day.
When I first, let's get to Kobach. This is a deeper conversation. Delingpole, the Telegraph, Raheem Kassam, all those guys, those rebels. Okay, Kris, numbers as bad as the Great Depression. We're going to have next hour Kudlow and Mnuchin or Kudlow and Hassett talk about the numbers even going to get worse. You're going to be in the Senate eventually here quickly with Cotton and these guys. Why are we still issuing work visas for people that are not citizens of the United States when we got 33 million people unemployed?
That is the number one question that they should be asking right now as we try to get our citizens back to work. 33 million new unemployment claims since the beginning of March. And it's at times like this we have to protect our own citizens. We owe no such obligation to foreign nationals who are here looking for work. So when I'm in the Senate, I will insist that U.S. citizens are first in line to get their jobs back, and that means a moratorium, continuing the moratorium, reducing or eliminating immigration in multiple categories. President Trump's moratorium on green card immigrants is a good start, but it calls for review of other categories as well, and that's why I'm so glad you're covering this, Steve. This is that 30-day time period when we America First patriots have to speak out loudly on this and say, we need a broader moratorium. Let's look at the numbers. There are 1.1 million green card recipients each year, of whom about 700,000 go in the workforce. So if this moratorium were in effect for a full year, it would be 700,000 people. But there are 1.4 million temporary workers coming in a given year, twice as many. And during this national crisis, we have to say that for the time being, the door is closed for most of those categories. We have to protect our own citizens.
Your future colleagues, Cotton and these guys, what are they actually talking about? Just go through. We got a couple minutes. Walk through the categories, and what are they trying to put forward to shut this down?
So Cotton and Cruz and Hawley sent a letter. They're talking about most categories. Now, they don't lay out exactly how it would work, but they say at a minimum, a 60-day hold on all non-immigrant categories. So that's all temporary visa worker categories. H2A, H2B, all of the H's, all of the, you name it, the OPT, everything. And then they say there are some categories that there should be a moratorium for a full year. And I agree. There are some categories where we already had Americans having a difficult time competing against foreign labor. And one more thing, Steve. The 33 million Americans who are starting to look for jobs now as things begin to reopen, they're not the only ones who need our help. There are also 4 million college graduates who are coming onto the job market in May and June looking for their first job. So we've got 37 million Americans. It's a no-brainer. We cannot bring in additional millions of alien workers to compete against our own citizens right now.
Okay, the company's going to say, besides the fact that Kobach's a hater, that we need these workers. They're filling. They got skills, or they're doing jobs Americans don't want. What say you, sir?
At this time, there is American to fill every single job out there in the American economy. That is a ludicrous claim. And even before the COVID-19 crisis, in every single category that the U.S. government recognizes in terms of job categories, either the majority, a small majority of Americans constituted the workers in that category, or in most categories, the vast majority of workers were Americans. So actually, it's false to say there are jobs Americans won't do. There is not a single job in this country that Americans won't do.
Kris, how do people get more access to you? We know the president really respects your opinion about immigration because you've been at the forefront. How do people get more information about your current writings, your campaign, everything that you're trying to put forward?
It's all on my website, which is kriskobach.com, KRISKOBACH.com. And, this is one of 4 open seats in the U.S. Senate. And right now I'm going head to head. There's 5 in the race, but the guy in second place has voted for amnesty and has been weak on immigration. And so if we want to get a strong voice in the Senate, this is a place to make a move.
The question always is, though, if Kobach wins a primary, he's so polarizing and he's nice. He's Kansas nice on the outside, but Kansas doesn't like his hard edges when it comes to immigration, trade, taking on the Chinese Communist Party, that he can't win a general. What say you, sir?
Well, the polling says otherwise. McLaughlin and Associates did a poll. The most recent one shows me winning the general by just under 10%. Rasmussen says they analyzed the Kansas race. They say it's a likely Republican lean no matter who the candidate is coming out of the primary, including me. So I don't think Kansas voters are disagree with you and me, Steve, on this immigration issue. They want Americans put first, and that's the only logical position that we can take at this point.
Kris Kobach, running for the Senate in Kansas. Kris, thank you very much for joining us today on War Room Pandemic.
Thanks. My pleasure.
Next hour, by the way, we'll put up all the links to Kobach. Yes, sir.
By the way, I have already picked the winner of yesterday's book. The signed book for signing up to the newsletter. So if people want to sign up to the newsletter again, warroom.org/newsletter.
Who was the winner?
Well, I'm waiting for them to give me permission to read their name out on air. I don't want to just. Yeah,
this is the haiku poetry.
No. This is people signing up to the newsletter.
Oh yes. Okay, fine. We got so many contests going on.
warroom.org/newsletter.
Jason Trennett's going to be here in the next hour talking about the economy. General Spaulding talking about 5G, and Michael Horowitz talking about the firewall that separates the Lao Beijing from the deplorables. We bind those two together. We're going to beat the CCP. All next hour.